Hello, it's Karen Burniston here with my monthly designer challenge video. The theme this month is 2 folds, and a very popular card style right now is the Slimline cards, and they are the longer cards. One thing I thought would be cool would be to add my 2 folds into a Slimline card, and what that allows me to do is extend the circle tag book so that it has 6 circles instead of 4. So my understanding of the slimlines is that as long as it fits in a number 10 envelope, then it is considered a slimline. So you have a little bit of flexibility in size. Now I went with 3 3/4 by 8 3/4. So one piece of my cardstock is the exact size of my card. The other one is about 1/2 of an inch longer so that I can score that, fold it over, and use it as a hinge. I do recommend a strong glue for this. I like my LINECO neutral pH adhesive in my fine tip bottle, and we do sell both of those items on our website. Okay, into this card is going to go my circle tag book, and the first thing I'm going to do is just cut 2 of the mechanism panels just in the usual manner. And then I need 2 more, but this time I'm going to fold my paper in half. How big is that paper? It just needs to be big enough to cover the half of the die that's just the circle side. So what I want to do is I want to put my fold line of the card right up to that fold line in the die set. And then I'm going to tape that in place so that it doesn't move, roll that through my die cutting machine. So what I'm doing by using that folded paper is I'm basically creating a double out on the end with just the circle. So when it opens up, it looks like this. It's just a mirror image double. And I did that twice. So these 2 doubled little pieces are going to become the inner part that's going to extend my circle tag book. So normally the tabs would go like this. You'd have a 4-panel pop-up. I'm going to space those out now. And then I just want to make sure that I've oriented the inner panel so that the tabs work. So this tab needs to go next to the tab on the other side, not butted up to it. So I may have to flip it over if it doesn't match up, but it looks like I've got these correct. Okay, and then on these inner 2 panels, I'm just going to mark an X on the 2 outside ones so I remember which ones I want to cut a hole out of. So in the circle tag book, there are decorator dies. And what I'm doing is I'm using the solid scalloped circle and then the one that makes the scalloped ring because the outer edge on those is identical. So I can do this at the same time by just putting one on each of the panels I want to cut a hole in. Okay, so then just rolling those 2 through my die cutting machine and removing the paper, I now have those scalloped frames in the 2 outer panels. Okay, these 2 pieces are going to become my inner 2 panels as well as my under 2 panels with the extra folds. So on the solid circle, I'm going to take my scissors and just trim along the circle so that the circle itself can fold to the back. And I'm going to do that on both pieces. So just with my scissors, trimming right next to the solid circle, and then folding the solid circle to the back. Okay, so now these 2 are going to line up and glue to each other. And I really don't need to have it past the fold on one of them. So I just chose the right one, but it wouldn't matter. I'm going to cut right on the fold and remove the extra. And then now this one's going to line up to the fold on the other side. I don't need quite so big of a tab to attach them, so I can just trim off some of the right side past the fold, but leaving enough to glue to, if that makes sense. So I've got myself a little tab here that I can add some adhesive, and then on the other one I just want to line up the edge right to the fold. And I am just taking my time with this to make sure that I have everything lined up well. And those 2 circles in the center, the fold lines are going to just line up next to each other as well. So you can see I've got the 2 circles in the front, the 2 circles in the back, and everything lines up. Now for the 2 solid circles in the back, I would like to hinge those together. So I'm doing that with just a little scrap of the leftover cardstock and just putting a rectangle right across the seam between them. I didn't even put a fold in it yet because it's easy to do that after attaching it. Just fold the piece up the middle to get the fold into that little hinge. Okay, now I just need to get all the folds working correctly. So the back 2 circles are already in the right position. They're going to be a mountain fold going towards the back. And then in the front, I want to work the little pivot points where the frame circles touch those arms that connect them. So just working those 4 folds so that I can collapse this down and those have back and forth folds, kind of that typical manner for a circle tag book. And these little tabs will fold to the back. Okay, before attaching this to the card, I'm going to decorate the inside with some pattern paper panels. These ones are 3.5 inches tall by 6 inches long. And I was delighted to find this paper in my stash. It's from Doodlebug and it has donuts all over it, which was perfect. Now, I do think that this card would look cute with just a polka dot paper in the background, though it wouldn't have to be donuts. Okay, so these two tabs on the solid circles are going to fold to the back, and those are the only two spots that are going to connect to the card. So what I want to do for that is add my adhesive to the underside of those tabs, because remember I'm sticking them to the card, not to the circle. So they're sticky on the bottom. And then I just want to line up my circles so that the fold between the circles is right over the fold of the card. And I've decided just to center it, but of course it could go anywhere along the fold. And then just pressing against those tabs for a second to make sure they set up, I can start to close the card and you'll see what will happen. The circles will start to raise up in the air, and where they are attached are essentially two new card folds inside this card. And that's what allows me to extend the circle tag book. Okay, now getting back to my circle tag book pieces, I've got those two that I've cut in the usual manner, and I am going to fold them in the usual manner. So right between the two circles, all the way across the piece. And then I need to find the outer fold and work that as well. Now the circle has to be in front of that as I pop those centers to come inward so that I can work the little pivot points next to the circles. So I'm just working in the usual manner for the circle tag book. If you want this to go a little slower, you can definitely go watch the video instructions for the circle tag book itself. But I'm just doing usual assembly on this. Now I will add adhesive to the little tab on the circle tag book and on that little center frame circle. And then just like in usual assembly, each of those tabs will attach to the opposite circle and just sit side by side in the card. So just going in there and pinching those until they set up. Okay, now I can let the card show me where the flat section out on the end of the circle tag book should be attached, because in the closed position, it's going to accordion fold down flat and then attach to the card. So where the glue needs to go is all over that flat section of the circle tag book. So just adding my glue so that that is sticky. And then now, making sure that it doesn't just flop onto the card, I want to collapse the card down. So see, this whole section has been accordion folded into the flat position, and I'm holding it. And then I'm going to carefully close the card so that I can press that down in the flat position where it goes in the card. And just making sure that everything looks pretty straight, I give it a good press. Okay, now that the right side is on, the left side is going to go on the exact same way. So I worked all the folds in my mechanism. Then I add the adhesive to the small tabs and attach them to the circle on the other side. And then once that sets up, I can let the card show me where the flat section needs to attach. And I do that by just collapsing the whole card down. Then I can kind of peel back the top layer so that I have access to that flat section, add my adhesive everywhere, keeping it all flat, close the card against the exposed adhesive. For this card, I decided to cover up the flat sections of the circle tag book by just adding more pattern paper to the back of the card. And so for that, I just needed the paper to start at the fold line and not cross it. So I just used my ruler to measure what that length should be on both sides. There is a die in the Nature Edges die set that is a stitched rolling hill, and it's really easy to just keep extending that going down the line so that you can get a nice long piece of rolling hills. The biggest decorator circle die in the circle tag book, there's actually two identical dies, so I can cut those two at a time, just going down the piece to get those rolling hills to go all the way through my scene. And nesting the dies together, I can make frames that also have those rolling hills to fit my two inner circles. There is a die in the circle tag book set that will cut the decorator pieces to fit those upper and lower sections of the pop-up, and it just leaves a little shadow all the way around. Now obviously those could all match, be the same color, but what I decided to do was use 3 colors, and I just pulled them out of the pattern paper, went through my scrap bin, found a teal and a couple different pinks that would match. And you can see how very generic this technique is and how that really could be decorated for any theme. But I'm going for Hello Sweetie with dogs and donuts. So the donuts are coming out of our Sweet Treats charm set, and then I've used the tiny little heart out of the middle of the heart-shaped glasses in our tiny accessories too, and I've just made a whole bunch of donuts. For the greeting, I used the 3 larger dies from word set 6 Summer, and from the Enjoy, I just trimmed the J into an I and then used the E, and then connected those to the word sweet so that it would become Sweetie. And then what I did with Sweetie and with Hello is I just glued the finished word that I had inked in those pink inks onto a piece of black cardstock, and then I just used my scissors to essentially make my own little shadow layer around it. Now that's not perfect, it's just hand cut, but it just adds a little punch to have that pop of black behind it. And I thought it would be fun to fashion my own larger donuts for behind my words. So those are 2 circles nested together out of the circle tag book, and I cut that nested set out of both craft cardstock and white. So the white one is going to become the frosting for the donut. So I'm just taking my scissors and just going in and enlarging the center hole. But while I'm doing it, I'm just making sure that I'm cutting just kind of randomly and wavy. So I don't want that to be perfect. Same thing with the outer edge. I just want to trim a little bit of the circle away, but just doing it with that sort of wavy motion. To make my frosting pink, I'll use some ink and a blending brush. And then I can use the stencil feature out of the small donut charm to be able to add some sprinkles all over the donut. And then I also added some hearts out of tiny accessories too. Then my little greeting will go over the top. And for the bigger circles, I went with our Circles Crosshatch die set. I just got this new little Easy Cuts machine from Dress My Crafts, and it is the perfect size little machine for when you want to do small dies. So I am going to be making dogs today. So I'll be using our cat and dog die set, but because I want to make some of the dogs look different, I'm going to rob the body from the bear from the Winter Animals die set. So I am cutting dogs and I am cutting bears, and then I'm cutting their little belly pieces that come out of each respective die set. With our animal sets, you make their faces using a built-in stencil feature. So I'm stenciling the face onto the dog, and then I cut this out of white so that I could just use a blending brush and some brown ink to add color. Now for this dog, I am going to rob the body of the bear. So I don't need the head, I can trim that off, but leave a little bit for the dog head to attach to. And then I just glue the dog head to the bear body, and then that way I have that little standing up dog. So I'm using the belly piece that comes in the Winter Animals that fits the bear. I'll use my pen just to add a couple of little paw lines. And then in the dog and cat set, there's both a bandana and a collar. So for this one, I'm going to add the bandana. So the dog body in the dog and cat set, he's sitting down, but in this case, by robbing the bear body, then you can have a standing up dog. And I am just going to use the tail to attach to the standing up dog. Now another way you can change up the look of the dog or any of our animals is just to move the face. So in this case, instead of lining it up perfectly, I'm going to tilt it a little bit and move it down. And then when I stencil, I'm only going to stencil on the eyes and the nose this time. And then that completely changes the look of the dog. So definitely experiment. If you're trying to use an animal and you want to use it repeatedly on the same card, just move the stencil and it'll change the look. You can also trim off the head from the body. In this case, I added the collar first and then tilted the head before gluing it back on. So that will also change the look of the dog. And then one last modification idea would be to trim the ears off and then glue them back on, but lower. And then that also changes the look. I ended up making 7 different dogs. And then what I want to do is add a dog and a donut to each panel of my pop-up. So you can see here on my finished card how each little panel has a dog and a donut. One extra donut attached to the pop-up in the front. I always like to start by designing the inside of my pop-up cards because then I can just use my leftover materials and kind of the same styling to fashion the front of the card. It just makes it an easier design process for me. So then I'm just going to glue my finished card front to the front of the card, and then on the back I'm going to tape down the twine that was used for my banners on the inside and then cover that with a piece of decorative paper. So I didn't think about the bulk when I added all of those pop dots behind my banners, and I kind of wish I wouldn't have because of how thick this is going to be. It still fits in my number 10 envelope, but I'd have to add extra postage. But if I took all of the pop dots off, I think it would be fine. My finished card says, "Hello, sweetie," with all of those dogs and donuts, but I definitely invite you to try this technique and just change out the theme because it really can be anything. It's so generic. And with the addition of that little center section that creates those 2 folds in the back, then you're able to have that elongated circle tag book that is perfect for the Slimline card size. If you check the description box below this YouTube video, you will find a link to the blog post. So the blog post is where you find the photographs of the card as well as the full supply list of all of the dies that I used. You will also find links to all of the amazing challenge cards by our international design team. Thanks for watching. If you click on the website link, you'll go to KarenBurniston.com, where you can find out information about purchasing these dies as well as links to all my other social media accounts. You can subscribe to this YouTube channel and check out some of my other videos. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.